Light in the Willow by Marion Steinke and Howard Malwin. I've got to tell you of the events that took place in late autumn 1897. We never think about the possible consequences until we regret the outcome. We cheer if the sum of all we did is positive, but never relive the acts that led to this cheerfulness as hard as in the cases we failed. So did James too. James T. Corbin was a man who loved the unknown, who did not fear the negative or possible hard roads until he met her. When he came to the town of Baton Forest, a small village near the river Moseley in the south of England, he became a lodger in a small tavern, and there she was, Chelsea, a kind young beauty with long black hair and blue eyes, who sang the songs of old and told of the ancient folk tales. She moved like no one else he had seen or known. He said she had something of the winds that kiss the land and leaves as only a river dream. Brave James was very fond of her, and they seldom parted, only for the hour around midnight. Chelsea, she often said, it was no good to stay outside or somewhere else too far off holy ground at this hour of night. Especially the cemetery in the center of the town, where all paths crossed, was a place where evil forces knitted their web. Never cross a churchyard in the midst of night, she said. James didn't feel much desire to pass this place with its crumbled away gravestones, older than the oldest house in town. In its center stood a single willow tree. At a certain hour at midnight, the people said, there shone a strange light in the tree that made the older people shiver, recalling the tales of old, and the younger ones shrink away and grow pale. It was no good to walk there. There was a story about the trees that Chelsea sang in the song. When the ancient force of the time before the world was built flew before the mighty power of God, the call was heard, and the devil tore the voids apart on this flight. A doorway between there on the young world. A tree grew out of the doorway, but in its crown there was a light, hung a pale lantern that had no great similarity with common light. Each time when she sang the song of the tree, the strange folk in the pub grew silent, only nodding here and then. It was no good to pass the road on the tree at night. But the legend goes on. There's no evil story without an opposite direction, no sinister place without a prize that would tempt a noble and brave heart. The tree was able to comfort hungry minds, to cure blind eyes, even to provide the most great game of all, eternal life. Alchemists had searched for it, kings had given all their wealth, legendary leaders sacrificed their people to gain it. Only the philosophers saw that it was better not to look for it. How tempting could it be for a young heart in love? In this night a terrible storm came over the tavern and shook the house in its foundations. Pieces of the roof were torn down like old leaves of autumn, and a flash of lightning set in the north side of the town church in fire. When the storm ceased and the folks of the tavern left, they could make nothing of the strange bodies that they found, wet and covered by heavy twigs. The skin was grayish blue, the head like a phosphenic metamorphosis of a pig and a fly, the snout and the head of a mammal, the eyes of an insect, surrounded by strange pieces of hair. The bodies seemed to be all dead and were obviously disordered by the power of the storm, like thrown from heaven. One man even thought that he had seen remains of wings. The people preferred not to think too much of this event and its consequences. They may have come from the forest that surrounded the town. No one knew what else looked there, but they prevented to look up to the starlit night or into the direction of the cemetery. The following night, Chelsea sang the song of another mare. Long before the cities of man were built, there was another folk, and the form familiar to us men. Because of the mightiness and the wisdom, the ignorance and foolishness too. The force from above touched the city, and it sank beneath the surface of the ocean, where it should rest into new geologic powers hoovered it to the light of the sun again, millions of years later. But the ancient folks of the Gadarene or the Altaris, how they were also called later on, prayed to the pagan god, and the souls lived on down to the tree. When Charles and James left that night, they discovered some trickery that the storm might have applied to his clocks in the tavern. So instead of having 1 hour left, the church clock of the remaining tower struck short before 12. Charles suggested to go back to the tavern instead of taking the long way around the city, but James felt no fear, and he was eager to look beyond the myths and legends. So he got her, instead, walking into the center of the city, where the graveyard was and the tree stood. There was a nasty smell like nothing James knew, and when the clock struck 12, he stood close to the thunder, surrounded by high-rotten monoliths in pure silence. The stones bore angelic words, terrifying and odd grimaces that made your soul shudder. And words of a writing that James could not place. Without a warning, it stood before them, where a second ago only darkness had been, the old twisted willow tree with a ghostly lantern in its crown. "There's a curse too," said Charles, and made him hold still. And then the fairy sing-sang started, came out of the deep, vibrating in the air, sinister and blood-chilling. People who love will part, the fool will sacrifice the smart, and in the end no one finds what he craves, except the eternal life he saves, a never-ending life for both. She begged him to turn around, but he grasped her around the shoulders. "We're never going to part, we stay together today, forever, nothing can keep us away from each other." And James walked over to the tree and freed on its course. James was damned, like the stories of old had foretold. He saw the light spinning from the tree, and he saw the hole reaching into another universe, where demonic creatures crawled over each other, over bare lands of stones and deserted hills. Grotesque beings with grey skin, and others even more horrifying shapes walking past hills that moved itself. James wanted to leave the light, but he seemed to be rooted on the spot. He looked down upon his hand, who became greenish and brown as made of wood, and he became part of the tree. In this night another storm came and destroyed all the town and its folks. Only the girl was left to tell evermore of what did happen that certain day. So many years ago, so many nights, so many storms. Whatever we do leaves a mark, the good, the evil, the bizarre. I remember it as if it was yesterday, as if I had never left the place. The girl was me. Whatever leaves the void brings in another thing. Give a thing, take a thing, whisper game, plans and plain. Your mind will be the battlefield where foreign forces will fight. The day against the night, until the darkness collaborates the light. Be sorry for the girl, be sorry for the night, and the girl took leave in fright. The end.